Fear is an enemy that you can fight and win against. And so I want to encourage you today on how to do that, okay? Because we're not meant to live under a cloud of fear or under anxiety and the stress of, I don't know what my future is going to bring and I'm uncertain about how to handle it. And so today I want to give you confidence and I want to give you courage today to face the uncertainty of your future with God, okay? We know what God says about fear, right? He says that He has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and of a sound mind. And Jesus said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. We know the command, right? Do not be afraid. So then the question is, how do I get this do not be afraid thing to work in my life when the future seems very unclear, right? We're facing unprecedented times in our history. Some of us are facing cultural issues, health issues, right? Social issues, economic issues, family issues. And when there's uncertainty, it's very natural for our response to be fear. So the first thing I want to address is, what is fear? Fear is an emotion. It's an emotional response to a perceived danger or threat. See, God created this thing in us, fear, so that when we face a danger, it causes us to stop, pay attention, right? And figure out, what am I supposed to do here to this perceived threat? Am I supposed to run away? Am I supposed to fight, right? Depending on what it is, depends on our response. But what the enemy likes to do is he likes to take this natural thing that God put in us that's meant to be a protection, and he likes to use it to the extreme. And what he wants to do with fear is he wants to attempt to paint a vision of our future, a vision of dread about our future, right? And what he wants to do is cause us to see a destructive or a negative picture of a future that is not a reality yet, right? It hasn't happened yet, but he wants you to become aware of all of the bad and evil and terrible things that could happen, and they very well could happen. But what that causes us to see is like a picture of something that could come to us, and what it does is it causes us to become afraid, right? And what fear does is it exaggerates the problems that we could be facing. It exaggerates the feelings of, what if we lack? What if we're missing out on something? And what it does is it begins to torment us. It causes there to be anxiety. We think about it. We can't stop thinking about all of the problems that could happen. And if this happens, what's going to happen? The after effects of it and all of the things that it's going to bring with it. And so it torments. And then that tormenting spirit, what it causes to do, the whole goal of fear is to paralyze. It's to stop you from moving ahead in the confidence of God, stops you from moving ahead in faith. And so what you have to do is replace the threat that you perceive with the promises of God. There's a reason why it says that perfect love casts out fear. And what happens is when we walk in relationship with God, when we allow God's presence to begin to lead us, when we're full of the Word of God and we begin to understand what God says about us, what God thinks about us, the plans and the purposes that He has for us, the strength that He has for us, the provision that He has for us, what it begins to do is it causes us to see and to understand that, you know what? The future, me going through the future, is not dependent on my ability to handle all of the uncertainties or all of the what ifs that I could come against. But I begin to see God's ability in me. And that's what perfect love does, is it causes us to rest in who God is and not have to be dependent on who we are. See, the reason why we fear is because we fear powerless to do anything about the perceived threat, about the future we could be facing. But when you recognize that God is for you, who can be against you? When you recognize that God is your peace and your confidence, when you recognize that God has a vision for your future, that He's painting a vision for your future, and His vision is to prosper you, to give you a hope, to give you a future, then you can be confident in God's goodness in your life. Even when you go through situations that you did not conceive or you did not expect to happen, God's ability to carry us through, His goodness for us, His goodness in us, and His desire to carry us through is going to be far greater than anything that the world or the enemy can throw at you, okay? And so I want you to be confident in the fact that God also has a vision for your future. Connect to the presence of God. Connect to the Word of God. Figure out, what is it I'm afraid of? Spell it out. Am I afraid of lack? Am I afraid of death? Am I afraid of going without? Am I afraid of the uncertainty? Whatever it is, figure out what you're afraid of and use the Word of God as a weapon against it. This is your fight. You need to stand up and you need to fight by pressing into the presence of God, pressing into the Word of God. This is a fight you can win and you need to win. Do not be afraid needs to be the motto of our lives. The reality is God, who is the maker of heaven and earth, His presence, His provision, His wisdom, His love, His goodness, His ability, His wisdom, His creativity is at work in you and through you in order to accomplish the things that He's created you to do. So do not be afraid. You do not need to be afraid. Rest in the goodness of God. Be confident in the promises of God. Press into the presence of God. You can fight this battle of fear, and you can win it, because perfect love will cast out fear every single time. You do not have to be paralyzed by the vision fear is trying to paint over your life, but you can move forward in confidence and in boldness because of the vision God has painted over your life.